So good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. We have our returning guest, Mr. Max Berre, who is ESJ's own International Tech Correspondent. So welcome back, Max. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well as well.
I am, and you're all the way from Nice, France today, on the south of France. So a little jealous because it's beautiful there. But we're going to talk tech today, and we're going to talk some seriously hardcore tech. So bear with us, people. Max is going to do some explaining. So Max yesterday sent me some info about the Cambridge Econometrics E3ME model, which stands for the Energy, Environment, Economy, Macro-Econometric Model, Jesus, which IRENA, which is the International Renewable Energy Agency, uses in reports. What does that mean?
Okay. Well, I guess the easiest thing to say is let's explain this back to front, right? So IRENA, International Renewable Energy Agency. Well, it's those guys are exactly what they sound like.
That's the easy part.
So essentially, what's aside from everything that the name tells you, we can say that what's interesting to know about the International Renewable Energy Agency is that they're a really good source for information, reports, data, statistics, which cover all of them, which cover a lot of the main markets in the world. A lot of the main technologies in the world, and they'll do it in such a way that you get a pretty clear understanding of what's going on a country-to-country basis. They really give you information apples to apples, which when you deal with this issue on an international basis, you actually have that problem that country A might give you their data in apples, and country B gives it to you in oranges, and what do you do with that?
Exactly. And that's where people get confused. They're like, well, how do we compare to other people? And do you want me to pull up the little presentation slideshow that you...
Go for it.
Okay, let me pull that up right now. And do you see it?
There it is. Okay.
There it is. It worked. Thank God.
The next thing to explain is what E3ME is about. Energy, right? So energy, environment, and economy. Well, that's also more or less what it sounds like. I just now came across also an interesting graphic, which I wish I had sent in advance. But yeah, basically the idea is it's not just energy, environment, and economy, but the idea is how these impact each other, right? If we're going to talk about a macroeconometric model, okay, right. So macroeconomic models, basically, what there is to know is you'll have many pieces to the economy, and you have some ideas about how the different pieces relate to each other. Sometimes the relationship between and among these pieces gets really quite complicated, quite endogenous as well, which you can take to mean feedback loops, vicious circles, virtuous circles, that kind of thing. And if it's an econometric model, what that means is that there's some statistics and some statistical research behind it. So there we go. E3ME, Cambridge Econometrics Macroeconomic Model. Basically, we're talking about a statistical model, which is large, which considers the effect of energy, environment, and economy on one another. That's what there is to know.
I'm going to advance to the next slide.
Okay. According to Cambridge Econometrics, they've actually published a manual It's about 130 pages long. It goes into quite some technical detail. So I had a chance to look at it, and this is what I sent when you asked me what might be nice to talk about. So basically, what there is to know with this is that the E3ME model is not a new idea; it's just a new model, so a new way that they've arranged the different pieces. But that being said, the FTT power model is an older model that they looked at, and what they say is like, listen, people have been making econometric models about the economy and energy and emissions for a long time now. So this model dates to this model FTT power dates to 2012. So it's like the forerunner of E3ME. And so what there is to know is that they looked at the natural resources and the energy technologies of 90 different countries, and they track the distribution of resources, and how they get depleted and what effect that has on the economy. And I guess, is it possible to skip ahead to slide 5 right quick?
Yeah, let me pull that up right now. So stand by. Got to actually get there, which
no worries.
I'm having a little trouble finding it. There we go.
It's the chart with FTT. It's the FTT power chart.
This one.
No. Yes, that one.
Okay, that one. Sorry, it took me a little while to get there.
No worries. We have all day. So all right. The basic idea here is you can see that people have been thinking for a long time about how the economy and the environment and energy are related, right? So the basic idea is that energy on one hand certainly makes the economy grow, and as the economy grows, you get electricity demand. But as the economy grows, then it's possible to do it's possible to do things which will hit the brakes on emissions, right? So the example that the manual gives us is that when you have a sizable enough economy, you can have feed-in tariffs. So you can. Sorry.
Feed-in tariffs have been around for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this particular model is 10 years old, but certainly the feed-in tariffs. It's actually a little bit difficult to get together research on feed-in tariffs, because so many countries have done it that if you would Google, feed-in tariff statistics, Google will be like, so do you want Norwegian ones or Japanese ones or what?
6 million options come back.
For sure. So yeah, basically the idea is that as the economy grows and demand grows, and basically as long as the demand is there, you can, and as long as the money on the table is sizable enough, you can engineer feed-in tariffs, and so basically you can make it worth somebody's while to go out and put up panels, or to collect tidal energy, or whatever the type of energy or energy storage you're thinking about might, whichever technology might be the one that you're targeting. You can do that, and doing that will then hit the brakes on emissions, and that's the basic idea behind FTT power.
So what you have the acronym PG, just so people understand when they look at this. What does PG stand for?
PG stands for power generation.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to assume, and I don't want to mislead anybody by saying something that's wrong. Do you want me to hit the next slide?
Okay. Now I think can we go back to the E3ME slide, which I think is slide 3. Yes. Okay.
This one. Okay.
So yeah, there we go. So as far as I'm able to tell, although again it's 130 pages, so I haven't managed to get through the whole thing just yet.
And that's okay.
All right. So as far as I'm able to tell, Cambridge Econometrica, what they do, they're basically, Cambridge Econometrics. They put together this model they published it in 2018, as far as I can tell. What they'll do is that they're looking at the European member states, and the manuals really proudly says, and even Croatia, right? So I'm guessing that the manual was published just after Croatia's accession to the EU.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, little known fact about the ascension process to the EU is that when a country gets in, they have to start stating their statistics in apples, so that policymakers can have direct comparison to what's going on in the other 27 member nations.
Absolutely. Dumb question here. Is the United States part of this or no?
So it says 11 major economies are explicitly taken into account. That's what the manual says. And on one hand, yes, the Americans are explicitly taken into account. On the other hand, whenever you see statements like, a small number of major economies, that's always going to be like, let's say the G7 countries,
yeah,
and China, right? So that's going to be like, U.S., Japan, Germany, China, and some of the other major economies in the Indo-Pacific, right? So, okay. So that's how we get to 11.
We took it to 11. Old joke, sorry.
Yeah, they took it to 11. Exactly. And the rest of the regions in the world being grouped, or the rest of the countries in the world being grouped into political regions, also kind of makes sense, in the sense that you have some regions of the world where let's say the economics, the economics and the politics in those countries really are very much part of their neighborhood, right? So an example of that is, if you think of the Arab Spring, you saw that happened politically. It started out as a student and labor union protest in Tunisia, right? But in no time at all, it affected 8 or 9 Arab-speaking countries pretty much overnight. So the idea is that sort of thing, those are the sort of events which guide the thinking, which groups the world into political and economic regions. So yeah, I guess we could say, if we go to the next slide right quick.
There you go.
Right, thanks. Yeah, we've got a few different generations of E3ME models. So I guess what's interesting to consider is that they're looking at regions of the world, but also they're looking at like subnational regions, which is how if you look at the most recent E3ME model, what you see there is you have in excess of 50 regions, right? So what that means, I guess. I guess maybe it seems a bit weird to have a large number of regions, except to consider that at the subnational level, there are different things. There's different things happening as well, and as well they're taking into consideration, different industries and the impact of those. Now, can we move on to slide 6, which is the slide which shows the. Oh wow, that's quite small. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm sure it'll show it better on people's bigger screens.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, what we can see here is that this is fundamentally the way a macroeconomic model looks, right? Like,
yeah.
basically you've got like many chunks to the economy, and they're all having these interrelated relationships, and that's what macroeconomics really about. It's about understanding the interlinked and interrelational nature of different pieces. Okay, so I guess the idea here is that we see this relationship between energy and the GDP, so energy and economic output,
Yep.
and then we have again the relationship between the GDP and employment, and between GDP, employment, and real income. And so I guess the idea here is that energy prices, they're able to impact, on one hand, the way that the economy grows, like what our demand does, what employment does, but on the other hand, they also are able to impact investment, right? And of course, that makes sense from a supply and demand point of view. So we can say that when it's clear that prices are high and the demand is there, there's a good reason to think that there's a good incentive for the investment to be there as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is again what feed-in tariffs are there to do. But I guess other ways to approach this as well. Like, for example, Japan is next month coming out with a feed-in premium. If you're familiar with that idea.
No, tell me what that is.
Okay. Well, a feed-in premium is basically like, instead of saying, right, we're going to give you a fixed price for your energy consumption, or for your energy production. It's basically instead saying, we are going to give you a fixed premium for your energy production. So basically, if you're able to produce energy in a way which is already able to take advantage of market demand, or if you're able to produce energy in a way which is economically efficient, so cheap, basically, then you're still gonna get your premium. And if you have trouble meeting the if you have trouble getting your energy in under cost, because the technology you're employing is really new, and it's really a trial and error process, well, you're still going to get your premium.
That's beneficial.
So it's considered to be a bit more flexible. That's the idea. But since it's not starting until next month, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll see where that goes.
Well, I'll keep my eyes open now that I know about it. I mean, some information I just don't get, and I'm grateful that you just told me that, because I find that fascinating.
Yeah, personally, Personally, I find looking at the Japanese market particularly fascinating. On one hand, because they've been at it a while, in terms of dealing with the renewable energy economy, and on the other, because they're so large, right? Like their economy is the number 3 economy on the planet, which means roughly that they're the size of France. They're like twice the size of France. They're bigger than Germany. They're big, right?
Yeah.
Wow. And so basically they're able to incentivize a lot of different technological changes, and also very famously they have the technology. This is one thing which is famous about the Japanese market, which I find interesting to talk about and think about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Next,
so,
want me to go to the next one?
Yes, please.
There we go. Look at that.
What this graph is saying is basically it's kind of asking the question, what is going to be the growth effect of going through a power shift and a technology shift, right?
Yeah.
Because that is actually the thing that the International Renewable Energy Agency wants to ask about. That's why they that's why they engage the services of Cambridge Econometrics, is they want to have some concrete projections about what is this going to do to the economy, right? And the answer to what is this going to do to the economy basically boils down to, according to the IRENA report, IRENA report that I looked at for this, which is a 2016 report. So it predates the pandemic, but still good. So what it comes down to is that they essentially say that on one hand, there's the fact that investments are made in new energy generation technologies and also new energy storage technologies are generally going to cause, just all on their own, 1 or 2 percentage points of economic growth, just all the way across the board. Okay, some outlier countries, right?
I see 2 big ones.
Ukraine. I don't know how that's going to turn out now, right? But
that's true. Yeah, but I mean, I see Russia and I see Saudi Arabia are below the line, which.
Yeah. Well, see, I guess the challenge that the Saudi economy is going to face with this is that if all the world's major economies start switching by 2030 to renewable energy, that's really going to impact the demand for their exports, right? Because I mean,
Saudi has for many years been working on renewable energy, so they're not solely relying on petroleum.
That's true.
But it is their primary export and the source
also
of
true.
Their wealth. So I get it.
Exactly. And so I guess I should explain the difference between the Remap and the Remap E, so like the blue bar and the green bar, and the idea here is that we're talking about, if I understood it correctly, we're talking with Remap just about like what are going to be the macroeconomic consequences of the technology changes that renewable energy is going to give. But then Remap E basically says, okay, well, what is going to be the macroeconomic effect once we take into account all of these knock-on effects and second-order effects, right? And that ranges from, for example, how's that going to affect the human resources, right?
Okay.
And see a good example of how that would affect human resources is that when you're gonna go solar, or when you're gonna go into maybe more offshore wind or tidal energy, you also need to bring on board the human resources, right? So it's a bunch of people with a bunch of new jobs, right? Um, then you have also the fact that I guess energy transitions are also going to lead to changes in energy efficiency, right? Because you're also going to have sectors like, I don't know, transport, which are going to need to figure out ways to adapt to the new infrastructure. And so actually transport and logistics is a big one, right? So basically, once you start taking those things into account also, then you see that the general idea is that the economic the change in economic growth rate is supposed to be even larger. That is so basically the story that the International Renewable Energy Agency wants to tell with this graph is that um, growth will be the growth impact will be bigger than meets the eye. Will be bigger than what we first project.
For most countries, not some countries will suffer. Like I see, Denmark is going to fall below the line.
Yeah. Actually, it's the case for most countries.
Yeah.
For most countries, and not for all countries. Now, I haven't really had a chance to look into the specifics of each of these countries and why the difference. But if I could give some speculation about some of the ones that catch my eye, I think one thing worth noting about Denmark, which I think is generally the case with a lot of other small northern European countries, and you see that that Northern Europe is not really that well represented on this graph. But
I did observe that.
The idea is that if the Remap E basically says, well, part of the story is like, how's this going to affect energy efficiency? I guess the idea is that if we look at the small northern European countries, they've already made the investment in energy efficiency, so it's not like they can further double their growth by for example, putting bike lanes everywhere, because they already have bike lanes everywhere.
Yeah, no, you're right. They've already done everything, so there's not going to be much of a change.
Yeah, exactly.
They've been very proactive.
But also it's worth considering that what the chart is really saying is, okay, well, it's not going to help you, but it's not really going to hurt you either. Like, don't worry too much. That's what's being told to Denmark in this chart.
Yeah.
Now that being said, if you would compare the other extreme examples, if you look at India and Indonesia, right? So yeah, some extreme examples from the Indo-Pacific. So if I understand correctly, these two countries are in particular known for having some of the most severe traffic jams on the planet, right? In their major urban centers.
That's I've never been, but I will believe you on that.
So yeah, so if I understand correctly, what this chart is telling me is like, it's great that you're able to switch to renewables, but it's like you need to do something about the energy efficiency also in order to really see these gains. That's the situation. Now with Ukraine, I have no idea what was projected, because there's a lot of specific possibilities.
Yeah.
On one hand, it might have also been a question of, please fix your traffic and rail networks and transit networks. But on the other, it might have been something along the lines of that the International Renewable Energy Agency may have foreseen some level of increased access or energy trading with the European market, right? Because because one thing about being in the European neighborhood is that for the states immediately around the EU, it's actually quite lucrative for them to do trade with the EU, and so if small things change in such a way that it causes that it gets the EU's attention, that may that may have some quite substantial macroeconomic impact just because of the just because of the size of the trade relationship.
Okay. Do you want me to hit the next one?
Well, I think that's it, right? That's the last slide. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
That's the story with the macro. That's the story with the macroeconomic model, right? Basically,
very complicated. It's complicated for the average viewer, which is who we reach. But I think the overlying message is everything is interconnected. Everything's a reaction to each other, or a chain reaction, which is something I frequently say, that our energy, our environment, and our economy are all intertwined.
I see. I would say it exactly like that. It's important to on one hand, it's important to remember that energy, emissions, economy, these are all connected to each other, and they're all able to impact each other. And I guess particularly what that last little bit shows us, what that last little graph shows us, is that in order for a country to really get the bang for its buck, they really got to take into consideration the nature of this interconnected relationship.
Yeah. Absolutely. And as you said, apples to apples, or we have to have everybody measuring the same thing the same way. Exactly. Otherwise, it's crap data, and we all know what happens when you have garbage data. You get garbage results.
Sure, garbage in, garbage out. Yeah, certainly. I wanted to say also one thing that shocked me about the last graph there, the difference between Remap and Remap E, is actually how much of a big deal fixing the transport and energy efficiency part of this matters.
Huge.
Well, the thing is that people keep saying it, but to see it in a macroeconomic graph, to say that it's not just nice to have more metro systems everywhere, it's that it will affect the macroeconomy of a country the size of India. That's really a different story.
But also transporting goods. I mean, mostly in the U.S., I believe most goods transported in the U.S. are done by tractor trailer trucks or semis. And I think it's only 2% is by rail. I'm guessing on that number, but it's not much. And I'm a huge train fan. I love trains. Family history is in the train industry. We need to fix our rail systems here. Europe has great trains, fantastic trains.
Certainly,
at least my experience.
I agree. I agree completely. Like as you can, as you know, I'm an American expat living in the EU since the early 2000s, and I have to say that the rail infrastructure, and particularly when you get into the high-speed rail, so like think of like the French TGV system, for example, or the Eurostar system. So on one hand, the quality of life improvement is certainly there for the individual, but on the other hand, you can feel the macroeconomic effects of it as well, or I can, because I'm an economist and I think about these things on a full-time basis.
Absolutely.
So I could say a good way to feel the economic effect of it is to go stand at like Paris North Station during rush hour, and you see that it's not just people commuting in and out of the Paris suburbs, but you see also the high-speed rail carrying business travelers between Paris and London, or Paris and Brussels, or Paris and Cologne. So basically hitting the capital of the EU, the capital of the UK, and the nearest large German city. And you can spot the business travelers, right? Like we're talking about suit, tie, briefcase, trench coat.
Running.
The look. Running, shouting in a neighboring language. So possibly shouting in Dutch, about how they do not have time for this crap. You know, like,
so that's
this,
universal.
yeah, certainly. But what I mean to say is that when you stand there and you observe this happening on a large scale, you think, right, so all these business travelers moving back and forth, this is millions of dollars being generated by the fact that the train is going to be in London in an hour.
Yeah,
Or I
which is
guess an
awesome.
hour and a half is what it takes to get from Paris to London by high-speed rail.
Which is amazing. And
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
we need to fix that here. And
So
I have a
it's not
friend.
just that I like it or you like it, it's that there's an economic impact to be
Yeah.
considered.
No, and people can, I mean, being able to commute, especially for work from farther distances, where
Sure,
you can live somewhere else but work in a major city. And, you know, not everybody wants to live in a metropolitan area.
sure, sure.
And this gives them the opportunity to not do that.
Well, it also makes the cities more viable, because one thing that we read here in Europe about the major cities in California, which is also true about Paris and London, is that normal mortal human beings cannot really afford to live. Um, it's certainly true. It's certainly true in central Paris, right? Like
Yeah.
if you look at the tourist areas that people think about, uh, like Montmartre, for example, um, which is which was in the interwar period known for its arts, its jazz. You know, it's Picasso, it's Josephine Baker. Okay, great, and tourists go and have coffee there all the time. But mortal human beings who are not born with trust funds cannot afford to live in such places, right?
No, it's hugely expensive.
Sure. They say that about San Francisco, for example, as well. I haven't been, but I hear.
Oh,
Um,
it's awful. I have friends that their commute into work before the
mhm.
pandemic was like 2 hours. Same when I lived in New York. I had
Right.
friends that would
New York,
live
another
in,
one,
yeah,
Manhattan.
I had
Um,
friends who would live in Pennsylvania and commute in from Pennsylvania. That's not close.
Yeah, well, being originally from the DC area, uh, I definitely knew people who commuted to New York, um, from the Washington D.C. area.
Good
So
Lord.
like it's essentially what that does to a city is it caps out no matter how expensive the real estate in that city gets. It actually and how unlivably expensive that city gets. It caps out how big that city can get geographically, right?
Yeah.
Um, and what that means is that the people who live and work in that city are either faced with very long commutes or extremely high cost of living to live in some commutable place. But
Yeah.
then when you get a situation like, um, I'll say, between Paris and London, sure, but also like if you look at the situation between Paris and the Paris suburbs, um, now it's the case that a lot of startups, a lot of French startups are based in the Paris suburbs now, right?
I
So,
believe it.
so that means you have people commuting in and out. And another interesting region for this is there's a is the I guess we could say in Dutch is called the Randstad, which is uh, the four main coastal cities, because the coast is shaped like a curve, uh, and so you've got I guess Rotterdam, Amsterdam, The Hague, and Utrecht, right along this curve, and so at the interior of the curve, there we go. You've got more or less like a region of small towns and villages, and so you have like who live, and so you have a region of small Dutch towns and small Dutch villages, which are very picturesque, the kind of place where tourists go to see tulips and windmills and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and
Right.
eat good at cheese, Gouda, right? To pronounce it as it should be pronounced. So people who live in such places, a lot of them will consist of families where the mom works in Utrecht and the dad works in Rotterdam, or the big brother works in Amsterdam and commutes, and so they're all and basically such towns are like an hour from all of those cities, taking advantage of the curve of the coast. Um, and so that's what having a well organized rail network allows people to do. Like it allows the cities to get big. It allows people to not have to live in them to work in them,
Yeah.
um, and and it allows also like intercity business and intercity commerce to go very smoothly. I I can say that yeah, basically, if it were not possible to do to travel in a business day between London and Paris, or between Paris and Amsterdam, or between Paris and Brussels, Europe would be a very different place.
Oh yeah.
In
And
the
on
business.
that, I am going to have to close us down because we've hit the 40-minute mark.
Okay.
And I definitely want this to be part 2, trains and cities and economy and everything macroeconomics. So let's bring you back in a month or so. Does that work for you?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that.
Well, you are our International Tech and Economist correspondent. So on that, guys, thank you so much. Max, great to see you again, and enjoy the south of France. We will bring you back in a little while to talk more about trains, economy, and the environment. All right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
I wish you a nice day.